Today is a special episode with a dear friend and colleague, Melissa Parsons. And in this episode, we will discuss fun as a filter. I hope you enjoy our special conversation, which was a joint podcast recording for her podcast and my podcast. It's going to be fantastic. Lots of laughter, lots of joy, and lots of insight. Thanks for joining us today at the Healing Medicine Podcast. Who are you listening to? I am Dr. Jessie Mahoney, and my co-host is Dr. Ni-Cheng Liang. We are two board-certified physicians who bring decades of experience to the conversation about wellness. If you crave more ease and aspire to rediscover your love for medicine and life, one mindful step at a time, you are in the right place. We hope you'll love today's episode, and if so, please share it. A reminder that nothing in our podcast is medical advice.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Your Favorite You. I'm excited because you are going to get to listen to a conversation between myself and my fellow retired pediatrician turned life coach and retreat host, Jessie Mahoney. And Jessie and I were trying to figure out before we started recording, we were chatting a little bit before we hit record. And lucky for both of us, we really can't remember where we met. We know for sure that we saw each other at a life coach school event in Texas many moons ago now, but we think we met before then, both of us with our perimenopausal and menopausal brains. We're trying to figure it out. And I don't know, we just have figured out through the years, and you can jump in at any point, Jessie, that we have a lot in common. We both are very much coaches and coachees, where we coach ourselves and we get coaching from other colleagues and people that we trust about our relationships with ourselves, our relationships with our very lucky husbands, and our relationships with our sons. So Jessie has 3 adult boys or young men, I should say. And of course, you guys all know that I have 2 if you've been listening to the podcast for any length of time. So, and we share a love of yoga. Jessie has become a yoga instructor, and she is frequently my yoga instructor through her coaching, well, they are kind of coaching and yoga
They're both
mixed together. Yeah. And so many of the questions that you asked us on our New Year's Eve practice, I immediately went and answered for myself, and then wrote an email on the spot and, sent it out to my people. And Jessie told me to answer these questions for myself. Your invitation is to answer them for you too. And, if you get stuck, come see her or me or both or whatever. And so I don't know, do you want to introduce yourself, Jessie? Actually, tell us, I'm going to not let you get past my number one question that I ask everyone, which is, tell us all about your favorite current version of you, Jessie.
My favorite, this will tie right into what we were going to talk about. My favorite version of me is someone who makes decisions through that lens of what would be fun. And that is a way of filtering out and deciding with much more ease. I used to be a terrible decision maker, and I would second guess and have so much judgment about it and trying to make the right decision. And I've done so much coaching and so much work on that through mindfulness and yoga and coaching. And I've over the years used a lot of different intention words and ways of moving through this, but my current favorite version of me is to make decisions from what would be fun. And I think we'll dive into that a little bit more, but even as what I do these days, I do what's fun. And you mentioned I teach yoga on Zoom and YouTube. I've become a YouTube yoga star. I'm laughing. But anyway,
I'm not laughing.
because it's fun. And I think people join me because it's fun. And I have found that fun things are the things where I show up and shine the brightest. This is my favorite version of me.
Mhm.
And I think that when you show up with fun for other people, it's similar. And
Mhm.
you mentioned that I offer retreats, and about a year and a half or a little more ago, I moved to a place where I could do retreats to the country, totally flipped my life upside down when my last child went to college.
Mhm.
And probably it was something I had been working on for many, many years, but
Oh, yeah.
I
You
did
had it
it.
out there in the
Yeah,
future
yeah, I
sometime.
did
Yeah.
it. And I have steadily increased the number of retreats that I have done. And some people say, I can't believe you're doing so many. And I'm like, well, it's fun. I'm having fun. People who are coming are having fun. I'm getting to teach yoga and go on hikes and do coaching. And I just love watching people transform, and I'll use your words, find their favorite them, and
Hmm.
figure out, what's in there that's ready to bubble up or what they're ready to let go of. And that has been super fun. And all of my decisions just about what kinds of things to offer. So I have a coaching business. I call it Pause and Presence. And I do a lot of mindful coaching, and some around relationships and some around parenting and some around transitions and some around leaderships. And I just try to make it fun. And people say,
Hmm.
oh, why did you add that one in? Because it's fun. Why did you stop
Hmm.
offering that one? Because it wasn't fun anymore.
It
Um,
stopped being fun.
stopped
Yeah.
being fun. And for me, I think that filter has really shifted my whole lens. And
Mhm.
um, I might actually weave in this idea of I did a TED Talk last year, which is not out yet, but it's going to be really fun when it comes out. And I will say, actually, the process of doing it wasn't actually that much fun. Like,
I can
and I
concur.
know
I'm
you're
in the
thinking about
process
it.
now.
It was
Yeah.
not that much fun because there were parts of it that were really uncomfortable and felt weird, but actually giving it was really fun. And
Mhm.
picking the dress that I wore, that is actually that picture of me in that dress is like my one of my favorite versions of me because it was just delightful. I don't dress up like that ever. And so that was really
Mhm.
fun.
Mhm.
But having given it is really fun. And so I can
Yeah.
also let that be the lens. Like it doesn't all have to be fun and life isn't always all fun. But my favorite version of me is that just digging
Mhm.
into what is fun, what makes you feel alive
Mhm.
and light up without all that other stuff, which still pops up no matter how
Yeah.
much I coach, no matter how much mindfulness I do. Um,
Yes. It turns
other,
out we're also
yeah,
human.
shows up. I wish that it didn't. And that's just resisting reality. So here we are.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
actually probably the rationale for doing this sort of regular yoga and coaching. I've been teaching yoga for free for almost 6 years now. And
Yeah.
but doing it almost every week and sometimes 4 times a week, like last week over the New
Hmm.
Year's, it's just this constant sort of reset, pausing and breathing and
Hmm.
resetting your nervous system and coming up with different ways of questioning and training your nervous system to show up differently. And so it just takes that constant practice from a place
Hmm.
of kindness, not because
Hmm.
I'm broken or you're broken.
Right.
Right? We just take that attention and practice.
Hmm. I think it's interesting because, both of us being pediatricians, I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, most of the time, medicine, studying to become a doctor, all the long hours, being on call, there was so much of that that was not any fun whatsoever, right?
Yes. Yep.
So we both spent a lot of years,
Mhm.
not having a lot of fun, having pretty high stress situations and, helping people through some of their most stressful situations. And yet we chose pediatrics, at least I did, because it was sometimes really fun, like
Yeah.
hearing the kids and like the stuff that comes out of their mouth and the shit that they get into and, that type of thing. It's just, I'm thinking about it just now as we're talking
Yeah.
about it. And I'm like, you know, if you would have told me was what I was doing fun before, I would say what I'm doing now is way more fun.
Mhm.
And there were still pockets of fun, which I think is what made me go toward pediatrics in the beginning. And in my view, sorry to all my friends who are
Yeah.
not pediatricians, but they were the nicest and the kindest and the most patient and that type of thing when I was training. So I
Yeah.
was like, okay, I can do this.
Well, I think it's interesting because I think what's fun for us changes also,
Mhm. Oh, for
right?
sure.
And
Yeah.
so pediatrics at one point for me was super fun. But
Hmm.
I also graduated or outgrew that version of pediatrics.
Hmm.
And is there another version? Probably. I'm still practicing pediatrics. I have three grandchildren now. So I'm a and nieces and nephews I'm practicing
Yeah.
in a different way. But and I also think once you're a pediatrician, you're always a pediatrician and you always get
Yes.
asked. And so while you're not seeing a patient every 15 minutes, you are still practicing. But
Yeah.
I work with a lot of people who are surgeons, for example, and they find
Mhm.
surgery fun. They find the
Yeah.
OR fun.
Yeah. This
So
is
at
true.
different points in time, we find fun. And I think that's something I've been exploring around this idea. I'm going to call it my favorite me. It's really funny. I was thinking your word was fabulous, and I actually
Mm,
like your most fabulous you. And then you said your favorite you, and I was like, oh, well, it's fabulous and my favorite, by the way. I'm going to go
of
with that.
course.
But that we get to decide what's fun, and for each of us, it's so different. So the
Hmm.
world outside us tells us what's fun, right? It's fun to go to
Hmm.
a party or it's fun to go to the beach. But at
Hmm.
different, like I find yoga fun now. I
Oh,
find
yeah.
live music fun. I didn't used to go see any live music. Like, I
Hmm.
mean, it was rare. And now I live in an area where there's tons of live music and
Hmm.
random hipster things that are just fun, right? And I just find it amusing. I actually went to the New Year's Eve party in my town. My town has like 150 people right now. But they have this band called the Illegals, which is a cover band, and I'm looking at you thinking you
Hmm.
would appreciate that. But
Love
the
it.
audience was uh, I am 56. I was probably one of the youngest people there.
Wow.
But what I loved and what was so fun was to watch these couples. There were many, many couples in their 70s and I'm going to say early 80s, 60s and 70s who loved the Eagles and were like dancing and just having this like in this, in the middle of a rainstorm in the middle of the country. It was really fun. And the band is all around our age, also
Yeah.
just having fun. And I'm thinking like this wouldn't have been fun. And it wasn't about drinking. It wasn't really about a party at all. It was just
Hmm.
about people enjoying themselves.
Hmm.
And that wouldn't have been my idea of fun 10 years ago, right?
Right, right,
And
right.
so I think just recognizing that what is fun for each of us, and I'm betting what's fun for you is different than what's fun for me and what's fun
Yeah,
for
for
anyone
sure.
listening. And so
Yeah.
to recognize that we get to choose what that is. I also want to
Hmm.
reflect that for me, this notion of fun has been a little edgy because
Mm.
when I was raised, it was like you don't just get to have fun all the time. There's like work and there's fun, and you don't get to make a decision about what you're going to do with a business or what profession you're going to pick because it's fun, right? You don't pick
Hmm.
pediatrics because it's fun.
Yeah, you have to
I
be
think actually
serious.
sometimes in pediatrics we do pick it because it's fun, but that's about the only one that you're allowed to say that about. And yet,
Hmm.
so I come to this lens of fun, like, is it okay to make a decision from a place of fun? And
Hmm.
I think my favorite version of me says yes, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I think recognizing how much judgment and layers and heaviness we might have about that, like weighing us
Hmm.
down,
Hmm.
is can be really helpful to see that and to I just try to consciously notice it and move on,
Hmm.
right? But when I
Hmm.
make
Yeah,
decisions that way, they work
yeah,
out well. And fun
yeah.
doesn't mean it's not hard work or it's not I wouldn't describe it. It's not work, right?
Hmm.
And it's not challenging yourself or putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation, i.e., the TED Talk or, standing
Hmm.
up on some. Last year, I did a lot more public speaking, and
Hmm.
I actually do find it super fun.
Yeah,
But
that's
that
awesome.
first part, when you get up there or when you're like writing the talk or tweaking it, or even when I'm talking to someone about coming to give the talk, that part's
Hmm.
not fun.
A
But
little vomit
yeah,
inducing, you
right.
should
But
say.
but the end of giving the talk and having people tell me how eye-opening it was, or reaching back out to me later and sharing what shifted, or when they
Mhm.
ask you to come back and give another talk, like that part's really fun. And so
Yeah.
I think it's this notion of like it doesn't mean it's easy. It just is like
Mhm.
I like to think about what lights you up or gives you energy.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so fun. I have a couple things to say about what you were saying. I'm thinking about being at the concert in your community. Yeah, like 10 years ago. And I would have been like, okay, this might be a little bit cringe, as my
Yeah,
children would
yeah,
say,
yeah, yeah.
right? And then I think as we get older, if people who are listening are a lot younger than us, I'm about to be 53. Jessie already stated she's 56. Like, once you hit a certain age, I think we just have far fewer fucks to give about
Yeah,
what anybody else thinks about us,
yes,
about, like if I'm not having fun somewhere, I don't give a fuck and I leave. Like I'm
yeah,
like, I'm out
yeah,
of here. If I do something and I do have fun, I schedule to do it as soon as possible again, right? Um, so I think it's partially that. And I do think I agree with you completely that we are socialized, or many of us are socialized to think that something has to be hard, or you can't just have fun because it's not worthy if it's not hard, or if you're having too much fun. Like there's some like worthiness bullshit around it. Um, and I think, one of my things, my TED talk is going to be about compassionate unlearning, and just it's just unlearning and unwinding all these old beliefs that made sense for you to have at a certain time in your life, and you've decided this is no longer fun and it doesn't make sense for me to have these beliefs. Like if I get to choose, which I think we all have far more choice than we recognize, like I am going to choose something, and I am going to choose to unlearn those old things and replace them with things that I think are going to be fun. And then if I find out after a while that actually it's not fun, then I can change my mind again. And it doesn't make me flaky or flighty or any of those things. Like we're supposed to change over time. And what was fun 20 years ago certainly would not be fun for me right now.
yeah. And as we're recording this right around New Year's, I'm thinking what was fun last year might not be
Hmm.
fun this year. And that's
Hmm.
okay, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever your focus was last year, you might want to choose something different this year.
Hmm. Yeah.
I think that for people in medicine in particular and kind of high achievers, we're like, you can't just change all the time. And when you use that
Mm.
word flighty, I'm like, yeah, we think it's flighty to change all the time. But what if it's intentional, or what if it's growth? What if it's
Mm.
actually moving in a specific direction, not even sure where it is, but just towards something that feels more aligned for you?
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly and 100%. So I think that, we just, I, I think it's changing. And I think the younger generations, we both have children in the same generation. I don't think they're so tied to, I have to pick this one thing and continue to do it for my entirety of my life. And I think I, of course, have a bias because I have children who have known me before coaching and who know me after. And I think I told you when we chatted last time, a couple years ago, Jack, my older one, who's now 23, said to me, like, Mom, how are we supposed to know what we're going to do for the rest of our lives at age 20? And I was like, oh, fuck. I'm like, I totally gave you that idea at some point, and that was what I thought. And because I was, you know, knew when I was 9 years old that I wanted to be a doctor, and then I became a doctor with a lot of, intention and purpose and all that. Um, and now I'm, not practicing medicine anymore. So I think for the majority of his life, and Owen's too, you know, I would have been more aligned with, you pick something and if you want it, you go for it and you keep going and that type of thing. And now I'm like, whatever, like you're going to figure it out. And, I'm going to be here. Your dad will be here. If you need us for any reason, like come home, we'll figure it out together. You don't have to like hold on to something just because you said it was something that you were going to do. Um, So I think my hope, I guess, is that it's changing and that the people who are coming up today will have much more freedom, I guess, and recognize that they have choice way more than our generation did.
And I see that in my three boys. In fact, they don't consider that they should or would stay at a job for
Hmm.
a long time. Now I
Hmm.
have one who's in sort of the startup world, and the other who one had done something that I would have said was you sort of ended up in a long-term job, but he continues to change and continues to
Hmm.
change fields. And that's literally they have no drama about it whatsoever. It's like, well, I think I'll try this now, and well, I think I'll try this now. And I'm like, huh. But one of the things that my kids told me, and I bet your kids think this too, which is that if my mom could change, anybody can
Hmm.
change. And that
Hmm.
my changing in front of them was incredibly powerful. And they were like, yeah, if you
Hmm.
think you can't change, like just look at her, right? And but I think that we can model this. I often tell people like what we tell our kids is very different than what we model. And so we'll tell them, oh,
Hmm.
you can have lots of different jobs, but then we do the same thing and we stick to sort of old beliefs and we don't unlearn and we don't transform, they're not going to believe us. But when you
Right.
actually change in front of them, that's where
Hmm.
you're modeling it. And I think,
Hmm.
as a pediatrician, it's something we talk about a lot, right? You have to model. You can't be
Oh,
eating
yeah.
chips and tell your kids not to eat chips, right? Like it
Yeah.
just doesn't work. And so, but thinking bigger about that as to how you live your life or how you approach your relationships or whatever it is you find that lights you up. And if we allow ourselves to change, then they can continue to evolve. I think there's
Hmm.
some, in peds, we're so fine with kids developing and changing every year. I used to say
Hmm.
it's like every 3 months that they go through the
Yeah.
nice phases and then the not nice phases, and that's when they're changing. And,
They
and
love
I'm
you, they
thinking,
hate you.
right,
Yeah.
but as adults, somehow this stops. It actually doesn't, by the way, right?
No.
And when
Yeah.
we're changing, we're a little crankier. That's just how it
Hmm.
how it works. Like it's part of that evolution.
Yeah, yeah. The footing feels a little bit more
Yeah,
unstable when you're
yeah.
changing and that type of thing. So, and I think it's natural to continue to question, like, am I doing the right thing or, am I not? And speaking to you earlier, saying, like, what is the right decision? It's like, I think another thing that I try to tell my people, and I know I've said it before on the podcast, is, you know, the worst thing that can happen if you make the wrong quote unquote decision is how you treat yourself after you realize that it's not the path that you actually want to be on. And if you can make a tacit or even a verbal agreement to yourself, like, I'm going to not do that anymore. Like, that is something I'm going to intentionally choose. And of course, it will happen. And then you're going to have to say, oh, I'm noticing that I'm doing this thing that I said I wasn't going to do anymore. And then you have the choice right there to start being more compassionate and kind and empathetic to yourself. And so, yeah, I mean, I hear you everything that you're saying. And of course, my boys have been like, you know, this is not how you would have handled whatever the situation is in the past. And I've even gotten that one of the things that still is a sticking point, I think, with Jack is, we were very much, John and I are both very type A, high achieving personalities. And Jack is too. He's, in my estimation, a typical older child.
Yeah.
And, you could look at him cross eyed and he'd like straighten up. And then Owens like comes out and we basically flipping the bird to us since he was able
Yeah.
to extend his middle finger. And so, but Jack, remembers us more pre me getting coaching and more pre John getting coaching. And he's like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
why did I get this version of you for most of my childhood? And Owen gets this, more favorite
Yeah.
version of yourself. So there's been, of course, we've talked to him and Owen about the idea that no two children, even living in the same house, have the same parents. Because we evolve and, we get ideas of how to do things and then we actually have the child. And I don't know about you, but did you have kids before you started practicing, Jesse?
I did. I had one in
Okay.
med school, one in residency, and one afterwards. But they all
Oh
got
my
a very
word.
different version of me. Although
Yes.
I think my oldest, who was the one I had in med school, right? He actually probably got the more flexible version of me because you
Mm,
had to be. And when
hmm
you're younger, you're more flexible, right?
hmm
You just
Yes.
and you have to be if you're a med student and a
Yeah.
resident. So he was 6 by the time I finished my training, right? Or because I took an
Mm-hmm.
extra year and I did a year,
Mm-hmm.
a chief year, in part
Mm-hmm.
because I had 2 kids. So I think that my youngest, who is quite a bit younger, I actually
Mm-hmm.
had a medical thing that happened between my second and my third. So I have
Okay.
kind of a gap. They're 6 years apart.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
so he got left at home for 6 years after everyone else had left.
Home Alone.
He talks about the stories of like this wasn't the way it was here, and this I'm just like it's there are a lot of things that are much better and a lot of things that you don't like as well apparently, but like that's always their brain is to sort of think that which is better. All of us have that brain, right? Which is
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
and
Comparing.
I'm just like it just is.
Hmm
It's just how it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. 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 I was going to say, like, I didn't have kids. So Jack was born actually at the very end of my residency. And after I had him, I was like, oh my God. Like, and then as he was growing up, I was like, oh, I gave these parents like such terrible advice. Like, they definitely were like, this woman has no idea what she's talking about. We're just going to go home and do what we want. And
Yeah.
she can help us keep him or her alive, but we're going to do whatever we want because this ain't it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just think about that. But I mean, honestly, that's even true. I have a whole podcast episode about once I went through a lot of the coaching and a lot of the trauma training and that type of thing that
Mhm.
I've done. Um, I wrote a podcast about all the shitty advice I gave you as your pediatrician.
Yes.
Like, and it's like, oh, like I would go back and take back so many of those words. And then because a lot of my parents contacted me after they listened to that episode, they were like, no, well, now you got to do all the advice that you would double down on that you gave us
Yes.
because you gave us great advice too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's another like a compassionate way to treat myself. Like, oh yeah, I'm going to point out all the things that I wish I wouldn't have told you. But yeah, it's possible that I will do an episode telling you also how amazing I was, because I was,
You
right?
were. Well, and I think it's always you did the best you could in the moment. Some of it was good,
Mm-hmm.
some of it was not. I think if we think about medicine too, things change. So like things
Mm-hmm.
we recommended early on in our
Mm-hmm.
career are no longer recommended.
Right.
And whether it was good advice or bad advice, it was, the standard national practice guidelines. And we gave that
Right.
advice, even though they've changed their mind. They know more.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
if they can know more and change things, we can know more and change things. It's
Yeah.
that non-judgment. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering for you, we were going to talk a bit about how you changed your last year. And I'm thinking like you know more.
Mm-hmm.
And this is
Mm-hmm.
more of your favorite current version of
Yes.
you.
Because she's always
Um,
evolving.
because she's always evolving. Do you want to share a little bit? I don't know if you shared on your own podcast about this, but I labeled it non-striving, but that's because I
Mm-hmm.
come from a mindfulness background where we actually
Mm-hmm.
have a term for this idea
Mm-hmm.
of slowing down and being in the
Mm-hmm.
moment and enjoying what is. But when
Mm-hmm.
we connected a couple weeks ago and hadn't spoken in, I don't know, maybe 2 years, we
Yeah.
had a conversation, and that's what struck me was so different about you in this current iteration.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to share a little bit about your last year and what?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I intentionally decided that if I never did another thing for another person, but for me, for the rest of my life, that I have given enough. I have, um, provided people with what they need. One of my parts, speak in IFS terms, um, thinks that in order to be liked by other people, in order to be loved by other people, I have to be somebody who is available to you at a moment's notice and will drop everything. And there is a part of me that still loves to do that. And there are people that I will do that for. Um, and I think I've realized that I don't have to have that relationship with everybody that I know. And it's safe for me to not abandon myself in order to help someone else. So I think that was kind of the onus, like the thinking about it and that type of thing. And then I just have so much white space on my calendar right now. I only have one group of women that I'm coaching, and I only have a handful of one-on-one clients. So there's tons of white space. And I think that I was at the Physician Coaching Summit back in November, and we talked about, what does it mean to have your own back? And I said, it means that I open my calendar and I see all the white space where it used to be just jam-packed with coaching or working at Emerald or, doing things with and for the kids and that type of thing. And I decided, I was like, okay, I am going to not berate myself for this. Like, I have intentionally chosen this. And it's hard to remember, I think, when, for 50 years, probably not 50, 40 years, a lot of my worth came from how can I help other people? So, and I mean, of course, I still want to help other people. Of course, I want every woman who is struggling in her life or is stuck in her life to have a friend send them this podcast and hear them talking, us talking rather, and think, oh, like there's a different way. Maybe I should get help to try to see what my way is. Right. Yeah. So it's not that I am like, fuck all of y'all. I don't need you. It's this intentional, like, okay, do I need to drop everything? Do I need to abandon myself in order to put something on my calendar? So interestingly, I will tell you, our puppy, Barney, who was almost 13, passed away on December 23rd. And, John and I were like, we're going to wait. We're not going to get another dog right now. It's right. Exactly. You see where this is going.
Yes, I do.
And so I was just thinking the other day, because the little guy that we're bringing home in a couple weeks is going to be 5 months old, and he's had some training, but I really want to keep training him up, and I know it's a lifelong thing, and I was chatting with Claude, who was my favorite AI, and about helping me pick my word and my phrase for the year, and telling him, like, we're getting this puppy, and he said basically like, oh, you're going to be busy. And I was like, oh man, like there went a lot of my white space. And it's like the perfect time to train this puppy, because I have way more than enough white space than I actually need.
And what if training the puppy is not busy? What if it's fun?
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be so much fun.
Right. Well, but I think it's in the labeling. Maybe Claude isn't as smart as you think, because I'm like, what if that's just fun? Like, white space could be time with your puppy, which someone might label as like tasks, the taskmaster in us.
So true.
But it could also just be connecting with the puppy and, handing out treats and going to a class. Could be like yoga, which could be like your white space, right?
Yeah,
like it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. That's interesting. I never think of yoga is like not, or is taking up space on my calendar. Right. It is something that's just for me, and I love it. And I travel to all the different studios in town, and based on the instructor, based on the type of class that it is. And like, I never think about it as like, this is going to take up time
to do, right? Or it's like taking up your white space. So it's that framing. And I was thinking, as you said, that like you had done enough, and there's like, again, that judgment of like, well, have I done enough? And is it okay? It reminded me of the fun conversation. It's kind of the ongoing thread, right?
Theme,
like, if it could be just fun to do or not do whatever you're doing. Like you're going to
Mm-hmm.
continue to help people when it's
Mm-hmm.
fun and how it
Yeah.
works. And yet
Mm-hmm.
immediately when I say that, I'm like, "Oop, there's a little judgment there, right? Do you get to
Mm-hmm.
do that?" And
Mm-hmm.
and yet, what if that's like each of us just that's our purpose is to show up when it works and when we have stuff to give, and giving
Mm-hmm.
beyond what we have to give isn't actually better. It's that more is not better, harder is
Mm-hmm.
not better.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be that smaller and less people actually has more impact. Like if you can show
Mm-hmm.
up in a space where you are healthier and have the right energy and the right,
Mm-hmm.
not the right, I shouldn't say that, have
Yeah.
capacity.
Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm.
There's also a trust in there. And I think it's
Mm-hmm.
hard to have fun if you're not trusting yourself. And I just
Mm-hmm.
heard
Oh
this
yeah.
like extreme level of trust, like I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's funny because when you first told me this story, I didn't resonate with like this idea of like, because I was hearing it as like a slowing down and more of like a boundaried white space. And when you're
Mm-hmm.
sharing it today, I was like, oh, well, actually, that's where my fun thing comes from. That like
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing that I need to do. And yes,
Mm-hmm.
like I actually said when I pivoted from peds to full-time coaching in 2019, I
Mm-hmm.
said, I have done enough. I've seen enough children in
Mm-hmm.
clinic. Not that I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to ever help another child, but I'm complete
You're
with
like,
this
you're a
journey.
child. I'm
Yes.
sorry, I
Yeah.
can't help
Yeah.
you.
Right. But I have, as my husband said, like, I think you could sit on the couch and eat bonbons and you would have contributed enough. And I remember that vividly, pretty regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that way in coaching too. Like, I've
Mm-hmm.
clearly done enough, whatever enough is. I
Mm-hmm.
don't like that word. It makes me anxious because I'm like, then it's
Yeah.
not enough and who's judging? But I feel sufficient in my
Mm-hmm.
sharing. And therefore, what comes now is the real, authentic, honest
Mm-hmm.
like amazingness, right?
Open-hearted.
That's just
Mm-hmm.
open-hearted. It's why you can teach yoga for 6 years just for fun, right?
Yeah.
But the same idea that the retreats come that way, or the
Mm-hmm.
groups come that way, or the one-on-one, or giving talks. I'm like, does it sound fun to go work
Mm-hmm.
with this group of people or work with this institution? If it doesn't sound fun or it doesn't feel aligned, then
Mm-hmm.
you can opt out. And I think that's where you end up with more white space. Although interestingly, it sounds like you ended up with a lot of white space, and last year I ended up with very little white space.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I felt energized at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
part of me says that there are different years that where you have like the year before I had more white space. Um,
Mm-hmm.
well, it's funny, I label it that way. See, there's a kind of a judgment in the white space. I had more white space because I picked up my whole life and moved houses and,
Mm-hmm.
changed everything. So there really wasn't more white space, but more white space on my calendar per se, as that's kind of like dog training. You do it on your own
Mm-hmm.
schedule, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's just really interesting to sort of figure out how we weave all these stories about things
Mm-hmm.
that suit us. I love that
Mm-hmm.
we're actually currently weaving stories that suit us. I used to weave a lot of stories that didn't suit me and weren't so
Right.
kind or compassionate. And now
Right.
the ones I tell are really strategically kind. I'm very proud of that progress.
Yeah, same, same, same. I'm proud of you too, and proud of me.
And proud of you. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I just want to reflect on this puppy. I've been thinking about getting another puppy. Our puppy died almost 2 years ago. She wasn't a
Mm,
puppy. She was very
mm.
old.
Yes,
Um,
same with Barney.
and it's that just sort of pull and like, is that something that is going to be fun or not? I haven't
Mhm.
made a final decision.
Quite
But I'll know.
decided.
I'll know when I know.
Yes.
But I love the framing of it also not being busy, it just being fun.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's so interesting because I'm thinking about you having a puppy at Nicasio for your retreats and that type
Yeah.
of thing, and how fun that would be for the people who come.
Yeah. Well, and that's the dilemma because would it be fun? And is there a space like if, I mean, there's plenty of space here that you could separate things out, but
Yes, yeah,
um,
yeah, yeah.
you wouldn't, it would have to have some boundaries
Hmm.
and thought. But
Hmm.
I'm really looking for a walking partner. That's really why. I mean, it's not the
Hmm.
only reason. A petting partner too. I
Yes.
think that dogs are fantastic for your nervous system, and so much of the work that I
Hmm.
do in yoga is around nervous system. And I think
Hmm.
that one of the ways that we get ourselves into trouble with coaching is by not addressing our nervous system. We just try
Mm,
to push ourselves forward. And
right.
so dogs are like a magical, fun way to work on your nervous
Mhm.
system. Uh,
Mhm.
and so that's part of it. But I also really want a walking partner. One of the things I lost when I moved were my favorite walking partners. And
Yeah.
so and my husband, as it turns out, doesn't like to walk as much as I do. He doesn't
Oh,
find it fun, and
bummer.
he really doesn't like to talk while he walks. But I think the dog will be okay.
Yes. You can have some amazing two-way
Yes,
conversations.
exactly,
Yes, that's
exactly.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're naming our puppy Frank Costanza Parsons. And so he is definitely, I want him to be a walking partner, and he's already learning to loose leash walk. So that's a good thing. And one of the things that I would love to be able to do with him is train him to be a therapy dog and then take him back to Nationwide Children's and be with the kids and like
yeah,
kind of bring it back to my first love, right? And
yeah,
but in a totally different way,
yeah,
just to be there to, provide, nose boops and
yeah,
furry pets and
yeah.
smiles to the families and all that kind of good stuff.
That sounds fun as we look
Hmm.
back, right? And
Yes,
spacious,
exactly.
white space, spacious fun.
Yes. I love it. I love it. I love it. All
This has been
right.
super fun.
So it's been amazing. I
Yeah,
agree. And I'm so glad that we decided to do this together. And I'm so glad that you're going to be sharing it on your podcast too, because then it will
yeah.
reach many, many more people. So that makes me so happy.
Well, thank you for having me on yours. Thank you for coming on mine. And I think actually we maybe didn't mention that at the beginning, but we decided to be easy about it and just have the conversation in the spirit of fun and white
Yes.
space
Yeah.
and share it on both of our podcasts. So
Yeah.
all of you, whoever's listening, wherever you might be, and to those of you who listen to both, you can just listen to one. It will be the same podcast. But
Yes.
we're so grateful and appreciative to have you out there
Yeah.
listening to us, and hopefully you all find the conversation as fun and inspiring as we did.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. So maybe we should tell people where they can find us so that your people listening to me can
Yes.
listen more and my people listening to
Yeah.
you can find you.
So, why don't you go first and also put in the info about your podcast so that because
Yeah.
they'll be listening
Yes.
to it potentially on the other.
Yeah. Perfect. So I'm Melissa Parsons. You can find me most on Instagram at Coach Melissa Parsons MD. I'm also on Facebook, Melissa Parsons Coaching. My podcast is called Your Favorite You, and I'm getting close to like 200 episodes, which is really fun.
Awesome. And I am Jessie Mahoney, and you can find me actually on Facebook as Jessie Mahoney and on Instagram as Jessie Mahoney MD. But most people find me through my website, which is also Jessie Mahoney MD, and it's Jessie with an IE and or Pause and Presence. You can find it through either. And I also have a podcast, which you may be listening to right now, or you may be listening to Melissa's. It's called Healing Medicine with Dr. Jessie Mahoney and Dr. Ni Cheng Liang. If you type in one of our names, you seem to get it instantly. Um,
Awesome.
and so we would love it if you listen to that. And just to throw out, if you want to practice yoga with me and or Melissa and I, when she joins, I teach yoga most weekends, Saturdays or Sundays at 9 Pacific, sometimes both. And so you can find links to that on my website, or if you sign up for my emails, then you get the actual schedule.
That's
Because I
amazing.
keep it fun, I don't teach every Saturday at 9 because sometimes there's something else fun going on. So I leave myself the flexibility. And sometimes, like recently, I will teach 4 days in a row to have a new yoga
Yeah.
series. And all of my yoga classes end up on YouTube, so you can also just do them there whenever works for you. And it's called Mindful Yoga for Healers with Jessie Mahoney.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Is it still limited to people in medicine, Jessie?
Honestly, everybody comes. I don't care who
Okay.
comes.
Okay. Sweet.
I love there are a lot of people who are not in medicine who
Hmm.
come. It's just that I often refer in that language, kind of like we did in the podcast about where you're coming from.
Right.
But I think that it pretty much applies to any high achieving woman in the United States. And I don't think that too many men come. I've
Yeah.
seen one maybe once, but
Yeah.
generally it's all women, but you do not have to be in healthcare to come. I like to be inclusive, and yoga is good for everybody.
For sure, for sure. And then, real quickly about your retreats, are
Oh, yeah.
those open to non-medical people, or what happens there?
Um, yeah, no is the answer. Well, the retreats in Nicasio, the women's retreats are for women physicians.
Okay, got it.
I do have one retreat called Connect in Nature, which I do with my podcast co-host. That's actually open to people not in medicine, and you can bring your husbands,
Okay.
men, friends, sisters, whoever. And that one we do at Green Gulch Farm and Zen Center, which is actually pretty close to where I am.
Okay.
Um, and we go to Muir Woods and Muir Beach, and you can learn to
Wow.
meditate, and we do yoga, and we do a little bit of coaching. The retreats
Okay.
in Nicasio are heavy coaching. Also, tons of mindfulness. We do sound healing. We do lots of yoga, and we do
Yummy.
all the things and eat amazing food. Um, but those ones are at the moment just for women physicians. The one
Okay.
way you can do it if you're not women physicians is if you have your own group of 6 or 7 people and you just want to
Mm,
come, like 6 or 7 friends, then you would have one that wouldn't
necessarily
have
be.
doesn't have to be that way. And I have had
Okay.
one once or twice people want to do that. And
Yeah.
so that is a way to do it. But generally they're all for women physicians.
Perfect. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing.
My pleasure.
Appreciate you. And
I appreciate
yes.
you.
You're right. We have become close friends, even though we see each other on a very irregular basis, which is the power of the internet,
Yeah.
which I love.
Well, we'll make a plan to get together in person because it would be fun.
It would be so fun. I
Sometime
agree.
I'll give us white space sometime in 2026 and 2027.
I love it. I accept.
Beautiful. All right.
All right, folks. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening. If our message resonates, we'd love to connect further. Join us for coaching, mindfulness experiences, workshops, and retreats. Invite us to speak at your institution or conference. When you work with us, you don't just consume information, you create real change. Find me, Chang Liang, at Awakened Breath and Jessie Mahoney at Pause and Presence.
Welcome to today's mindful moment, a chance to explore the fun filter yourself. Taking a moment to find steadiness, find your sit bones on the chair or your feet on the floor, and to close your eyes and bring mind, body, and spirit all into the same spot. Reconnect with your breath, taking in a big inhale in through your nose and out through your mouth. And invite this question. What would it be like to live life through a fun filter? What would it be like to make decisions from a place of what sounded fun? Choosing to do those things that sound fun, that light you up, that energize you, that encourage you to enjoy the things you enjoy without judgment and without guilt. What might that look and feel like? Taking in another big, deep breath, honoring any resistance or judgment that is there. Many of us were taught and told that making decisions because they were fun is not valid. But what if it was? Can you bring your hands to heart, one atop the other, taking in another big, deep breath, wrapping your heart with breath? Exhale, let it out. And ask yourself, If you were making decisions from a fun filter, what sounds fun to do, to try? Honoring that your version of fun might be very different than others. What is fun for you? What sounds fun? What might be fun? Breathing in, wrapping your heart with breath once again, giving it a hug, letting it desire and enjoy whatever it enjoys. And exhale, let it out. Taking in another couple of breaths, breathing in and breathing out. Two more big breaths here, breathing in and out. Letting your brain dance around this idea of fun, playfully, lightheartedly. Thinking about fun as playfulness, connectedness, and flow. What would bring more playfulness into your life? What might bring more connectedness into your life? What kinds of things do you do where you feel completely in flow, where it feels good? Breathing in and out. Flipping your hands to the uncomfortable hold, hand on heart, asking that question again. What sounds fun? If you were making decisions and agreeing to do things, adding them on only if they were fun, what would you say yes to? What would you stop doing because it's not fun? What are you doing that you think you should be doing that maybe you could opt out of? Obviously, all of life can't be fun, but much more of it can be. What would you change if that were your filter? Breathing in once more. And a long, smooth exhale. May you move forward this week considering what sounds fun. May we all be well. May we all be healthy. May we all engage in things that bring us more fun, delight, playfulness, flow, and connectedness. Have a beautiful week. Namaste.